Yes, we are starting with the topic of executive. Yes, any doubts from the previous class? No doubts as such? Yes, as far as the government is concerned, we have discussed there are three branches. First is the legislature, executive, and judiciary. So now on we'll discuss in brief detail. We'll get an idea with respect to the role performed by the legislature, executive, as well as the judiciary. So today we'll be starting with the executive. As we have discussed several times, legislature legislates, that is, it makes laws and policies. Role of the executive is to implement those laws and policies, and judiciary adjudicates. Yes, it reads into constitutionality. Are the laws and policies made by the legislature, are they constitutional or not, or are they in violation of the constitution? Action taken by the executive, is it in line with the constitution or in violation of the constitution? Fine. So this is what we know. Now the role of the executive as such is to implement the laws and the policies laid down by the legislature. Yes, its role is to administer the country. Yes, apart from it, the executive is also involved to a certain extent as far as legislation is concerned. The executive is also involved to a certain extent in the legislative process. And this legislative process in which executive is involved is known as delegated legislation or subordinate legislation. So the executive fills in the blank spaces left in the legislation by the legislature. See, we have studied how constitution in itself we have discussed how constitution in itself is a framework. It is a broad framework of governance. It provides broad principles, broad procedures of governance. The detailing as far as everyday rules and regulations is concerned, everyday laws is concerned, is done by the legislature. So the legislature is involved, is there to make laws with respect to changing times and according to the needs of the society, evolving needs of the society. Yes, but the laws made by the legislature are not detailed documents. They will give you a broad framework. Yes, but the detailing within the legislation, how it is to be implemented at the ground level, is done by the executive. So the legislature will make laws, broad framework of laws. It will tell us, yes, this is how. So if there is a law made on MG Narega for that matter, then they will tell us, yes, now everybody who's willing in a rural setting to do unskilled labor, the government is liable to provide that person with employment opportunity. That person is to be paid minimum wages. Yes, minimum fair wages. The government is supposed to provide employment within 15 days. If it fails to do so, there has to be some compensation given to the person who's seeking such employment. Yes, so such legislation has been framed by the legislature. But what kind of a work, in which village can be made available? Who will actually be involved in listing down the person who's seeking employment? Who will be the person who will identify work for these individuals? The nature of work that can be given at this village level in Haryana would be different from what can be given at the level of Kerala, yes, at the level of Karnataka. So you find that detailing with respect to rules and regulations of the legislation is done by the executive. Yes, generally I give this example which is quite understandable is, for example, in case of even in this institution and in Vision IAS also for that matter, it was people on top who would have taken a decision as far as starting with pre-foundation courses concerned. Yes, so they came out with a decision that they would like to start with pre-foundation course, and we will like to complete this course in 60 to 70 classes. Yes, these would be the maybe the broad subjects that should be dealt under it. But the detailing, what should actually be taught in polity classes, what should actually be taught in economics classes, should IR be included or should IR be excluded, है ना, general idea दे दिया है the top notch people, but the detailing has been done है ना at a lower level, at a relatively lower level, at the administrative level. Yes, so you find that that role is known as subordinate. So executive is not just going to implement the laws and regulations. In fact, we can say for better implementation of laws and regulations, for real life implementation of laws and regulation, they also perform the role of subordinate legislation. Or it is also known as delegated legislation. So they would be involved in making detailed rules and regulations to implement the laws made by the legislature. Yes, this is known as delegated or subordinate legislation. You can expect direct questions on it in prelims also. I think so 1 or 2 years they would have asked a question on what do you understand by subordinate or delegated legislation. Now the role of the executive does not end at implementation or in fact initiating subordinate or carrying out subordinate legislative work. Yes, they are also involved as far as initiating lawmaking. They are the one who tell, see, even at the level of vision, if supposedly we have started with this course known as pre-foundation course, at the top notch, the people at the top notch, they've decided that yes, they would want to start with this course. But they did not dream of it all of a sudden. There has to be some feedback. From the ground level, the information would have gone that yes, there is a set of students who would want maybe an introduction into the foundation. We would, it would be better for the students if we can build a base, some sort of a base before getting into detailed studies. Yes, so in fact it is the executive, because they are operational at the ground level. They are interacting with the people. Yes, they are making these, they are implementing these laws. So they know the ground reality. Yes, so in fact it is the executive which tells the legislature, this is the kind of law we want. Yes, and especially in a parliamentary form of government, you find that we will study later on when we study the process of legislation, that it is the ministers. They are the one who primarily suggest what kind of a law. They will suggest a law, they will work with the bureaucrats to come out with a law, to draft a law, and then the role of the legislature is simply approval to the law that has been made by the minister. Approval or denying approval or suggesting amendment, whatever it is. Yes, so the lawmaking, the initiation of the lawmaking is also done by the executive. Yes, so executive plays a very, very important role. It implements the laws made by the legislature. It fills in the blank spaces left in the legislation by the legislature. It is involved in delegated or subordinate legislation, and it is the one which initiates legislation. Yes, so it was the local level bureaucrats, who might have suggested that there is scope of so much unskilled labor work, yes, which would help build infrastructure at the village level, and then it can be a source of employment as well. Fine. So that is the idea. They initiate, they are the one who propose the laws, the kind of laws that should be made. Fine. So this is the function that the executive actually plays. Yes? Fine, let's write down this much. You have given the heading executive. Under it, write down. It is the branch of the government. It is the branch of the government responsible for laws and policies. Sorry, responsible for implementation of laws and policies. Responsible for implementation of laws and policies adopted by the legislature. Write down. Apart from it, next point, apart from it, it is the executive that fills in the spaces in the legislation approved by the legislature. Yes. Write down. They are involved in subordinate legislation or delegated legislation that is they make detailed rules, regulations and procedures under the broad principles laid out in the legislation. Full stop. They also suggest the kind of laws required. Thus they initiate legislation. legislation. Yeah, lawmaking. Yes. So, yes, it is that branch of government which is responsible for implementation of laws and policies adopted by the legislature. And it is also often involved in framing of policy. Framing of policy, how? Through two ways: through delegated legislation, as well as by initiating, by suggesting the kind of laws that is required at the society level, at the country level, at the state level, whatever it is. Yes, so they are not simply limited to implementation. That is how we generalize it, but they also have certain amount of role as far as framing of policies in the country is concerned. Fine. Now, who constitutes the executive? In case of India, who are the ones who constitute the executive? Not necessarily, है ना? See, even a law on education, and a primary education for that matter, as I told you, we'll discuss later. The role of legislature, though we say it is involved in lawmaking, but in reality, the legislature is not so much involved in lawmaking. The parliament or the national legislature has been reduced to an approval body. The laws are made by the ministers, and ministers are what? They are executives. Yes, so yes, in policy formulation, in law making and policies, जो ये schemes है, सर्व शिक्षा अभियान, है ना, ये सब they carry forward the broad laws, the broad principles, the broad accepted, है ना, कि अभी the government of India should be involved in providing primary education. Yes, so in fact, both at both level, the executive is the one which plays the primary role. The parliament has been merely reduced to a body which simply approves legislation, simply approves the lawmaking. ठीक है, तो that is the idea. Yes, executive में तो bureaucracy is also involved, but यहाँ पे अभी हम primary focus political executive पे करेंगे, है ना? Bureaucrats को क्या बोला जाता है? Permanent, है ना? One is political executive, the other is permanent executive. So political executive is ministers and permanent executives are bureaucrats. But when we are discussing executive under polity, we will primarily discuss the role of ministers. है ना? Governance वाले section में हो तो फिर we talk about the bureaucrats, but here the primary focus is on political executive. So anyways, now who constitutes executive in case of India? The president. Next, the vice president, yes. The prime minister, the council of ministers, yes, and the attorney general. Yes, very good. So these are the offices which constitute executive as far as India is concerned. Yes, write down who constitutes executive in India. Who constitutes executive in India? So you have president, vice president, vice president, comma, council of ministers, headed by the PM, council of ministers headed by the PM. And the attorney general. Attorney general is going to represent the government. Yes, the government, the central government generally speaking, in the various cases that might be brought against the central government or in which the central government may be involved. And attorney general, we'll discuss it in detail and not as part of pre-foundation but as part of foundation, but they are political appointments, है ना. So once the COM has been constituted, once a government has been elected to power, so the government of the day decides who they would want as their attorney general. Yes, and he occupies office till the time the government of the day is in power. Once the government falls, generally the attorney general is expected to resign and the new government will choose a new attorney general. Fine. So, fine. This is who constitutes executive. Our major discussion, our major focus is on types of executive. Yes. So, we need to know the various types of executive systems in the world. Now, there are the types of executive is based on two systems. Yes. 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 Why do we need a legislature? है ना. See, देखो बात ये है कि if there is this concept of separation of power. Yes. Now, depending on the type of executive, and you find that to exercise, we can say, the primary role. What is the role of the legislature? One is making laws. Making laws, generally it is about adopting laws. Now we know. Yes, the private members, हम उनको private members कहते हैं जो ministers नहीं होते, है ना. जो other MPs हैं who are not ministers, they can also initiate a legislation. They are not bound not to initiate legislation. ठीक है. So they can initiate a legislation. However, there is less chances of the legislation initiated by a private member or a MP who is not a minister. They can initiate, they can propose legislation, and they can take help and they can come out with a draft law. But there is very less chance of this law being adopted by the parliament. Why less chance for the law to be adopted by the parliament? Yes? Yes, because for a law to be adopted, certain majority is required, and you find the government of the day enjoys the majority. So it is a probability that the MP is from an opposition party which does not enjoy as much majority, and it is likely that the law might not be adopted. Also, the private member does not have an expertise. A minister on his own does not sit down and write the draft of a law. Yes, many individuals are involved in drafting of the law. Yes, so you find that there is therefore a less likelihood of the law suggested by the private member to be adopted. But anyways, he is not bound not to suggest any law. So they can be involved to an extent in lawmaking as well. Otherwise, generally speaking, their primary role has been reduced to adopting laws. ठीक है. और फिर यहाँ पे पार्लियामेंट में कमिटीज वगैरह भी काफ़ी है ना. थ्रू दैट दे आर इन्वॉल्व इन अप्रूवल ऑफ लॉ, है ना, डिटेल्ड डिस्कशन ऑन लॉ, increasing awareness as far as law is concerned. Fine. The second role that the parliament or the national assembly plays, एक तो लॉ मेकिंग है, और क्या रोल है पार्लियामेंट का और क्या रोल है नेशनल लेजिस्लेचर का? इफ वी वर टू डिस्कस, है ना, वी जस्ट सेड, अभी हमने एग्जीक्यूटिव के फंक्शंस लिस्ट डाउन किए, तो उसमें कहा कि एग्जीक्यूटिव इम्प्लीमेंट्स एज वेल एज इनिशिएट्स लॉ मेकिंग एज वेल एज इन्वॉल्व्ड इन डेलीगेटेड लेजिस्लेशन. So it seems as if the legislature has no function or has bare minimum function and a body which might not be required. But if we were to discuss what is the role of the legislature, क्या है role of legislature? वो तो parliamentary में है. Accountable to public, तो सभी accountable to public है. They are representatives of the people. So primary role actually legislature का है representation. है ना, representation of the people. People themselves cannot be directly involved in legislation, in a lawmaking, in approval of the legislation. So in that case, our representatives do it for us. And the most important role that we can say that that the legislature plays as far as parliamentary democracy is concerned, they ensure checks and balances on executive. Yes, so it is not an organ that can be disposed of. It is when we say that the executive plays a very important role, in fact, in lawmaking as well as implementation of laws, does not make legislature a useless organ. It has importance, it has quite a bit of significance. Yes, your parliamentarians are expected to meet thrice in a year and deliberate. Yes, they are expected to represent. The government has made a law, but what about the view of the people? They might not like a law. There has to be a feedback that has to be provided by the legislature. They have to hold the executive to the account. They have to prevent concentration of power. All of a sudden, the parliamentary forum cannot turn into a presidential forum. They will ensure some checks and balances. Yes, so that is the role of the legislature. Yes, as far as amendment of the constitution is concerned, we will discuss, or we have in fact discussed, that you need some special majority. That special majority the government of the day might not have. So they will need to bring the opposition party together. है ना, अमेंडमेंट्स को इसीलिए इतना डिफिकल्ट बनाया गया है, रिजिडिटी जब रखा गया है कुछ रीजन से, तो ताकि इट रिप्रेजेंट्स द विल ऑफ द पीपल. यस, फॉर ऑल दैट देयर इज इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ लेजिस्लेचर, है ना. एग्जीक्यूटिव डिटेल्ड रोल में जाएंगे तो ऑफ कोर्स यू फाइंड दैट एग्जीक्यूटिव प्लेज अ लॉट ऑफ रोल. इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. Executive is the one which is taking the country forward, but it does not mean that the legislature is an organ that we can dispose of. Yes. That is the type of executive that we are going to study. Yes, that is in parliamentary form of government. I am not saying that the legislature plays no role. है ना? I am not saying that. But in presidential form of government, the legislature, the executive is not necessarily drawn from the legislature. So in that case, can the legislature be disposed of? No, even in that case, the legislature plays a very important role. The laws made by the executive needs to be ratified by the legislature. Yes? Sorry? Yes. Yes. When we say that it is involved in making of the law, है ना, हम लेमैन टर्म में या सुपरफ्लुअसली कह देते हैं, तो ऑफ कोर्स द रोल ऑफ द लेजिस्लेचर इज टू रिप्रेजेंट मासेस. Represent masses how? Represent the will, represent the needs, the requirements of the masses. So they say, okay, this law is good enough, we should adopt. है ना, वही है. देखो, जब डिटेल्ड डिस्कशन में जाते हैं तो फिर देयर इज अ कंसेप्ट वेयर बाय द एग्जीक्यूटिव without involvement of the legislature at times makes laws under extraordinary circumstance, है ना. They can make, उसको बोलते हैं ordinances. President passes ordinances. President तो खुद कुछ कर नहीं सकता, तो बेसिकली एड एंड एडवाइज्ड बाय सीओएम. लेकिन उसको क्रिटिसाइज किया जाता है, ज्यादा ऑर्डिनेंसेस पे रिलाई नहीं कर सकते, बिकॉज यू नीड टू गेट अप्रूवल ऑफ द लेजिस्लेचर. Approval of the legislature in itself is very important. It shows that we as people want this law or not, है ना. तो that is the idea. अब in fact दोनों चीजें हैं, है ना. Parliamentary form of government is saying that the ministers are drawn from the legislature. So in fact, legislature has a very important role. Yes. And when I say that the role of the legislature is approval of legislation, in that case, in a parliamentary form of government, the government is the majority party. So the government enjoys majority vote. So the government can get any law passed that it wants to get passed. तो वहां पे importance of the legislature goes down. लेकिन presidential form में ऐसा नहीं है. Yes, तो वो चीजें हैं. तो यू अभी उतना उसमें मत जाओ. अभी जो समझा रहे हैं बस उतना समझो कि है ना कि एग्जीक्यूटिव का रोल क्या है. एग्जीक्यूटिव का रोल यही है ना. एग्जीक्यूटिव इज इन्वॉल्व इन इम्प्लीमेंटेशन, इट इज इन्वॉल्व इन सबऑर्डिनेट और डेलीगेटेड लेजिस्लेशन, एंड दे ऑल्सो इनिशिएट the legislative process as such. Yes, fine. And the legislature in itself, the act of approval is itself very important. There are various mechanisms through which legislature exercises control over the executive. Executive is spending the money. The executive can spend as much money as it wishes if there is no legislature. It requires approval of the legislature to spend money on the schemes, on the policies that it has made. है ना. बजट यही होता है. बजट में द पार्लियामेंट वोट्स कि यस वी अप्रूव योर बजट. द बजट इज पुट फॉरवर्ड बाय द फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर, है ना, एंड अप्रूवल इज गिवन बाय द पार्लियामेंट. सो दिस एक्ट ऑफ अप्रूवल इन इटसेल्फ इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. देन दे आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग द नेशन. yes, representing the people, and they exercise this checks and balances on the executive. Fine. Anyways, coming back to our topic, what are the types of executive? Yes, so generally we talk of two forms of executive. One is parliamentary form of government, the other is presidential form of government. When we talk of types of executive, we basically distinguish between the two types of government, parliamentary and presidential, based on the concept of responsibility. Who is responsible? So you find that the system which is based on collective responsibility or collective leadership, matlab a group of individuals taking decisions, and those group of individuals are responsible to the people. Yes, so you find that a system which is based on collective leadership ka example hai parliamentary form of government, because it is not the PM alone who decides, it is the COM which decides. So you find that collective leadership is ensured here, collective responsibility is ensured in parliamentary form, and there is also a system based on individual leadership. Individual leadership is in presidential form of government. It is the president generally. He is individually responsible for the policies. He is the one who's deciding who will be the ministers. He is the one, and the executive is not drawn from the legislature. There is individual leadership and individual responsibility of the president in presidential form of government. Yes, fine. So these are the two types we are familiar with, and there is another type that you should know, that is semi-presidential system. Let us discuss these systems in relative detail. Yes, so let us start with parliamentary form of government, which we are aware of. We have already discussed what are the three cardinal principles of parliamentary form of government. What are the three cardinal principles? Yes? Yes, presence of nominal and real head. So there is dual executive. There is the real head and there is nominal head. The real head is the Prime Minister who's heading the COM, and the nominal head is the President. The President is known as head of the state, and the Prime Minister, who's the real head, is the head of the government. He is the de facto head, or he is the de jure head. Yes? Fine. See, in case of India, the nominal head is the president, but in case of countries like UK, the nominal head is the monarch. Yes? So you find, actually going by it, you find that the parliamentary form of government can be a democratic in case the head of the state is the elected head. In that case, parliamentary form of government is known as a democratic republic. So India is a democratic republic, and when your head of the state is the monarch, then it becomes, yes, a constitutional monarchy. Yes. So you have, in the first cardinal principle says that there would be two heads. Yes, one is the real head and one is the nominal head. One is the de facto, one is the de jure. This is one of the distinguishing feature of parliamentary form of government. What is the second distinguishing feature? Presence of two houses is not a distinguishing. Bicameral legislature तो यहाँ पे नहीं है ना, यूएस में नहीं है. The Senate as well as the House of Representatives. Yes. Second feature क्या है? Executive is drawn from legislature. Yes. So a minister has to be an MP. Yes. Yes. And the third is executive is collectively responsible to legislature. These are the three distinguishing features of a parliamentary form of government. Yes, and in a parliamentary form of government, it itself can be of two types. It can be a constitutional monarchy or it can be a democratic republic. Yes, or a parliamentary republic. Yes. However, the head of the state in both the cases is a ceremonial head, is a nominal head, is only a de jure head. It is only in their name that the government is conducted, but they are not involved in direct governance. Now, what are the features of a presidential form of government? Distinguishing features of a presidential form of government. फर्स्ट पॉइंट से जाएंगे, यही 3 पॉइंट्स को देखते हुए जाएंगे. यहाँ पे क्या था पार्लियामेंट्री में? डुअल एग्जीक्यूटिव है ना, यहाँ पे रियल हेड और नॉमिनल हेड है. यहाँ पे देयर इज वन पर्सन, द प्रेसिडेंट is both head of state as well as head of government. Therefore, the president enjoys concentration of power. And the government is conducted in his name and he is directly involved in decision making as well. Yes, so there is a lot of concentration of power in him. Then, यहाँ पे second point है, the executive is drawn from the legislature in parliamentary. In case of presidential form of government, the executive is independent of the legislature. It is not drawn from the legislature. Yes, the president is generally directly elected or elected through an electoral college, जैसे भी हो, but there is direct involvement of people. Direct involvement of people क्यों है? क्योंकि there is concentration. He is the powerful person. He is the head of the state. He is the head of the government. Yes. So people have to be directly involved in his election. So you find that the executive is not, the president is not a member of the national legislature as such. Yes. He is not drawn from the legislature. Also, he appoints ministers. He distributes the portfolio based on who he thinks would serve his government the best. ठीक है, तो हमने यही पढ़ा था यहाँ पे पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट का. हमने कहा था एक प्रॉब्लम ये है कि एक्सपर्ट इन्वॉल्व नहीं है. मिनिस्टर्स आर नॉट एक्सपर्ट्स इन देयर फील्ड. मिनिस्टर्स आर MPs. दे आर नॉट नेसेसरली एक्सपर्ट्स इन देयर फील्ड्स. तो इट इज द गवर्नमेंट बाय एमेच्योर. बट यहाँ पे प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म में प्रेसिडेंट विल अपॉइंट जनरली एक्सपर्ट्स इन द फील्ड हु ही फील्स वुड सर्व हिज गवर्नमेंट the best. Fine. So there is no link between the executive. Executive is not drawn from the legislature. एंड थर्ड यहाँ पे पार्लियामेंट्री में क्या है, एग्जीक्यूटिव इज कलेक्टिवली रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू द लेजिस्लेचर. इन केस ऑफ प्रेसिडेंशियल, द एग्जीक्यूटिव enjoys a fixed term. He is not responsible to the legislature. The president है ना generally enjoys a fixed term of 4 years subject to impeachment, but as such the legislature cannot pass any vote of no confidence, yes, and make the government fall. Yes, so you find that here the executive is not responsible to the legislature in a presidential form of government. Yes, now what is semi presidential? अच्छा, presidential form of government के examples बता दो. US, Brazil and most Latin American countries tend to have a presidential form of government. Parliamentary form of government के examples बताओ. India, UK, what else? Canada, Japan. All these are examples of parliamentary form of government. अभी सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल, सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल के एग्जाम्पल्स फ्रांस, श्रीलंका, रशिया. These are examples of a semi-presidential form of government. Now in semi-presidential, there is presence of both president as well as prime minister. Yes, the president is head of the state, the prime minister is the head of the government. The prime minister in case of presidential system is appointed by the president. The president appoints the prime minister. Yes, however, the prime minister, though appointed by the president, cannot be removed at the whims and fancies of the president. Yes, because the prime minister is collectively responsible to the legislature. But in case of semi presidential form of government, है ना, यहाँ तक कैसे लगता है सिमिलर है पार्लियामेंट्री और ये, है ना, यहाँ पे भी दो हैं, हेड ऑफ स्टेट, हेड ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. हेड ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट इज अपॉइंटिंग द head of government, the prime minister, and prime minister is generally the leader of the majority party in the parliament. Yes, and he and his COM is collectively responsible to the legislature. Yes, but you find what is the difference? In case of semi-presidential form of government, president enjoys a lot of power. He is not a ceremonial head, he is not a nominal head, but there is a lot of concentration of power in the president. In fact, the prime minister is to aid the president in governing the country. Yes, so you find that is the system, but this system is quite prone to conflicts. Yes, it might so happen that the president and prime minister are from the same political party. In that case, smooth functioning of the government. It might also so happen that the president and prime minister are from different political parties. So in that case, there will be tussle. And in semi-presidential, president has power, enjoys real power. So जब real power होगा, तो election क्या होगा? Directly by the people. So people directly elect the president in case of a presidential form of government. That is how it is distinguished from parliamentary form of government. Yes. So this is the idea of semi-presidential form of government. Fine. Fine. In case of Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka is an अलग केस है वो. यहाँ पे एग्जीक्यूटिव प्रेसिडेंसी है, तो यहाँ के प्रेसिडेंट बहुत ज़्यादा पावरफुल हैं. Yes, he enjoys extraordinary power. In fact, Sri Lanka was once a parliamentary form of government. In 1978, their constitution was amended because a very charismatic leader came to power. He wanted to concentrate power in himself. Therefore, he amended the constitution and converted Sri Lanka from parliamentary form into an executive presidency form of government. Today, Sri Lanka wants to go back. The reform that we suggest is go back to parliamentary form of government. But no president who enjoys so much power would like to give away his power. Yes, so that has not happened as of now. But this is an extraordinary case. ये कभी और है ना, as part of maybe IR, we'll discuss the case of Sri Lanka in detail. Relatively, हाँ. देखो, हाँ, देखो सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल और पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म में क्या डिफरेंस है? वहां पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म में प्रेसिडेंशियल इज अ सेरेमोनियल हेड, वो नॉमिनल हेड है, वो नाम के लिए ही हेड ऑफ स्टेट है, ही इज अ फिगर हेड, ठीक है. बट इन सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल, why it is called semi presidential? Because you find that the president enjoys a lot of power. जब पावर है, दोनों के पास पावर है, तब कंफ्लिक्ट होगा. इनफैक्ट सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल बोला है, उसको सेमी पार्लियामेंट्री बोल सकते थे. सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल क्यों बोला है? क्योंकि प्राइम मिनिस्टर से ज्यादा प्रेसिडेंट के पास पावर है इन केस ऑफ सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. बट देर इज सम पावर विथ द, इनफैक्ट द रोल ऑफ द प्राइम मिनिस्टर इज टू एड द प्रेसिडेंट इन गवर्निंग द कंट्री इन सेमी प्रेसिडेंशियल. तो यहाँ पे क्योंकि पावर डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड है, इस वजह से देर इज अ स्कोप ऑफ टसल. और इन केस ऑफ इंडिया द प्रेसिडेंट निड नॉट ऑलवेज बी, जैसे एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम थे, है ना, ही वॉज नॉट नेसेसरीली फ्रॉम एनी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो पॉसिबल इन केस ऑफ इंडिया. यस, एंड प्राइमरी रीजन यहाँ पे कंफ्लिक्ट का स्कोप नहीं है क्योंकि प्रेसिडेंट डज नॉट, ही इज अ सेरेमोनियल हेड, है ना. ये यहाँ पे प्रेसिडेंट हैज पावर, देयरफॉर देयर इज अ स्कोप ऑफ कंफ्लिक्ट. नहीं, सिस्टम अलग है ना, ऐसे तो कैसे करा देंगे साथ ही में इलेक्शंस, है ना. ऐसे तो अभी साथ ही में इलेक्शंस कैसे कि प्रेसिडेंट और प्राइम मिनिस्टर दोनों के एक ही, जैसे अभी इंडिया में चल रहा है वन कंट्री वन इलेक्शंस, वैसे कि सेंट्रल स्टेट में क्यों करना है ना. देयर सिस्टम इज सच, दे हैव एनविसाज्ड देयर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ पावर सच. तो इस सिस्टम का बेसिक, दिस इज द नेचर ऑफ द सिस्टम. यहाँ पे कंसेंट्रेशन ऑफ पावर इन वन पर्सन, यहाँ पे कलेक्टिव रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द पीएम और प्रेसिडेंट, वो है ना, प्रेसिडेंट इज अ सेरेमोनियल हेड, लेकिन यहाँ पे दे हैव चोजन टू डिस्ट्रीब्यूट पावर बिटवीन हेड ऑफ स्टेट एंड हेड ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. तो दैट इज देयर चॉइस, है ना. और जरूरी नहीं है, देखो वोटर्स मच्योर होते हैं, है ना. एट टाइम्स इफ देयर इज वोटर मेच्योरिटी है, देन दे माइट चूज पीपल फ्रॉम टू डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज एज प्रेसिडेंट एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर. तो वो चीज है. फाइन. पाकिस्तान में, पाकिस्तान इज एक्चुअली, एंड वहां पे उसको हम कहते हैं डीप स्टेट. वहां पे एक्चुअली सिविलियन लीडरशिप इज अंडर, सिविलियन लीडरशिप डज नॉट एंजॉय मच अथॉरिटी, है ना. वहां पे इट इज द मिलिट्री विच एंजॉयज अ लॉट ऑफ पावर. तो कहने के लिए वहां पे पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट है, लेकिन द रियल पावर डज नॉट लाई विद द सिविलियन लीडरशिप, इट लाइज विथ द आर्मी. तो वहां का केस ही थोड़ा अलग है ना. जब वही है, वो जब आईआर वगैरह पढ़ेंगे तो नॉमिनली कहने को पार्लियामेंट्री है, बट यू डोंट फाइंड दैट द प्राइम मिनिस्टर एंजॉयज अ लॉट ऑफ पावर देयर. वो अलग चीज है. अभी हम फेडरलिज्म पे नहीं जा रहे. देखो, पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट और प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, लेट अस कीप इट टू पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट कैन बी यूनिटरी और फेडरल, वो अलग चीज है ना. ये क्या है, ये फेडरल एंड यूनिटरी फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट. फेडरल मतलब सेंटर स्टेट के बीच में पावर डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड है, और सोर्स ऑफ पावर इज द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन. यस, हमने ये पढ़ा है, डिस्टिंक्टिव फीचर. यूनिटरी फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, the central government is all but powerful and it can choose to give some power to the regional level government, yes, for sake of convenience of administration, and at any time take back those power. For example, UK and India both are parliamentary form of government. UK is a unitary form of government, India is a federal form of government. ठीक है, तो ये वो अलग कंसेप्ट है. तो इसमें मिलिट्री फेडरल क्या रिलेशन है वहां पे? देखो, कहने के लिए पाकिस्तान इज अ यूनिक केस। हमने अपना कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन कब अडॉप्ट किया था? 1949 में अडॉप्ट किया, 1950 में एंटर्ड इनटू फोर्स है। सो इमीडिएटली आफ्टर आवर इंडिपेंडेंस, पाकिस्तान के केस में द फर्स्ट सिविलियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन दैट दे अडॉप्टेड वाज इन 1974, है ना, जो आज तक वहां चल रहा है। लेकिन वो कई बार अपसर्प हो गया। 1974 में उन्होंने अडॉप्ट किया, लेकिन बाय 1978, इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, है ना, वहां पे मिलिट्री रूल आ जाता है। तो वहां पे ये इस तरह का रिलेशन है। कभी मिलिट्री ऑफन अपसर्व्स द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। तो कहने को द रियल पावर शुड लाई विथ द पीएम एंड हिज सीओएम इन केस ऑफ पाकिस्तान, बट दैट इज नॉट द रियलिटी। बट अभी के लिए हम पाकिस्तान को अगर पूछोगे तो बस इसी में रखते हैं, पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे, है ना। वो दैट बिकम्स अ डिस्कशन ऑफ आईआर फॉर, है ना, पाकिस्तान। फाइन। दीज आर द 3 टाइप्स ऑफ एग्जीक्यूटिव। वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल। who was contesting? हाँ। देखो, प्रेसिडेंशियल फॉर्म में प्रेसिडेंट बहुत पावरफुल है। ब्यूरोक्रेसी plays a very important role in presidential as well as parliamentary form of government. But in case of parliamentary form of government, the role of bureaucracy is much greater, है ना। तो यहाँ पे भी इन केस ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, अच्छा पहले ये बताओ, पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट में रोल ऑफ ब्यूरोक्रेसी इज मोर, व्हाई? हाँ, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ एमेच्योर्स है इस वजह से, क्योंकि मिनिस्टर्स डू नॉट पोजेस द रियल नॉलेज। इट इज द, है ना, इट इज द ब्यूरोक्रेट्स हु आर सपोज टू एनलाइटन द मिनिस्टर कि ये प्रॉब्लम है और इसका ये सोल्यूशन हो सकता है ना। दैट इज योर रोल इन द फ्यूचर। सो दैट इज द रीजन यहाँ पे ब्यूरोक्रेसी हैज बीन डिफाइंड एज द स्टील फ्रेम ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट। बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल है। लेकिन इवन इन केस ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, ब्यूरोक्रेसी थोड़ी ना कोई इंडिपेंडेंट स्ट्रक्चर है। द पार्लियामेंट कैन डिसाइड, मेक अमेंडमेंट्स, है ना, द कोड ऑफ कंडक्ट, है ना, देयर प्रोसेस ऑफ अपॉइंटमेंट। यूपीएससी ही अपने एग्जाम्स का पैटर्न बदलती रहती है ना। तो देयर माइट बी चेंजेस। हम कहते हैं अभी हमारे यहाँ क्या है, अभी हमारे यहाँ देयर इज अ सेंट्रलाइज्ड एग्जाम थ्रू विच सेंट्रल लेवल ब्यूरोक्रेट्स आर चोजन। बट यू माइट हैव की लैटरल एंट्री की भी तो हम बात करते हैं। तो इवन इन पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, yes, the PM and the COM, and who hold the real power, they can make changes. Yes, but of course in both, compared to both, parliamentary में ज़्यादा role है of bureaucracy. Fine, so that is the idea. Fine. Let us write it down, and beyond this if you have doubt. अच्छा, there is a question, who are private members? Private members are MPs who are not ministers. Yes. So MPs who are not ministers are called as private members. तो इसीलिए कंसेप्ट है प्राइवेट मेंबर बिल, जो बिल हैव बीन इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय they have been introduced by MPs who are not ministers. Yes, it is he or she is the nominal head of the government. The government of India is conducted in the name of President of India. नॉमिनल बोल रहे हैं, नॉमिनल, है ना। तो वो वैसे ही बोलेगी, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया इज कंडक्टेड इन हर नेम, है ना। इंडिया अगर कोई ट्रीटी साइन करती है इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे, है ना, तो इट इज साइंड इन द नेम ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट। समझ में आया? तो इसीलिए राइट इट डाउन नाउ. Give the heading as types of executive. Under types of executive, you can draw two arrows. One is a system based on Yes, under types of executive, draw two arrows. System based on collective leadership. System based on individual leadership. System based on collective leadership, two types: parliamentary form of government and semi-presidential form of government. यहाँ पे presidential form of government. Yes. Draw this table. And parliamentary form of government में further you can go two types. You have constitutional monarchy or a parliamentary republic. Yes. Now give the head as parliamentary form of government. Yes, all of you have written it. Next is, you have given the head as parliamentary form of government. Write down under parliamentary form of government. Under parliamentary form of government, write down. It comprise points. In points, write down. In points, first point, write down. It comprises dual executive. It comprises dual executive. Under it, write down. In subpoint, subpoint A, head of the state, head of the state, head of the state is the de jure head, is the de jure head. Head of the state is the de jure head. Semicolon, ceremonial, ceremonial head, ceremonial head. इसी में लिखो, he may be a monarch or president. He can be a monarch or a president. Yes. Where you have written monarch, if there is a scope, you can write down monarch, put a arrow. Or in case it is a monarch, it constitutes constitutional monarchy. Monarch पे arrow डाल के भी आप लिख सकते हो constitutional monarchy. And president पे Parliamentary republic. Parliamentary republic. Under the first point, second subpoint. So A was de jure head, ceremonial head, head of state. Second subpoint, head of the government. Head of the government. Second subpoint, subpoint B, head of the government is the prime minister. Is the prime minister. He is the de facto head. De facto head or real head. Yes. Second point. So first point was dual executive. Second point is the executive is drawn from the legislature. The executive is drawn from the legislature. And third subpoint is the executive is collectively responsible. Is collectively responsible to the legislature. To the legislature. Yes. You can write down the examples under the parliamentary system. If there is a scope, you can mention constitutional monarchy के examples लिख लो. Constitutional monarchy के examples हैं UK, Japan, Canada. And parliamentary republic के example हैं India, Italy, Germany, etc. India, Italy, Germany, etc. Next is semi-presidential form. Semi-presidential form. Achha, before we go into semi-presidential form, I'm just recalling this point, the second point that we have written, that the executive is drawn from the legislature. It implied, what does it implies in connection of separation of power? Dilution of separation of power. There is interdependence between executive and legislature, dilution of separation of power, and therefore, how do you ensure that no organ becomes autocratic in a parliamentary form of government? Through doctrine of checks and balances. That we have already discussed previously, so I have not made you write all that. Fine. Fine. Next is semi-presidential form of government. Under it, write down first point. In such a system, there is presence of dual executive. There is presence of dual executive. Dual executive, put a hyphen. Head of state is equal to president. Head of state is president. And head of government is prime minister. Full stop. Write down, but unlike the parliamentary system, the president possesses, the president has significant powers. Has a significant powers. Second point, write down. The Prime Minister and the ministers यहाँ पे लिखो बस ministers लिखो. Prime Minister and ministers are appointed by the president, but he cannot dismiss them, as they are responsible to the parliament. Next point, write down. The president is elected by the people, and the PM is the leader of, या is from the, जो भी, is the leader of majority party in the legislature. इसी पॉइंट में लिखो. Change the paragraph, write down. They may belong, Prime Minister and President, they may belong to the same political party or at times can be from different political parties. Full stop. This can lead to contradictions and tussles between them. एक लास्ट पॉइंट लिख लो. The Prime Minister is expected to aid the President या help the President. The Prime Minister is expected to help the President to run the country. Full stop. Examples लिखो. Examples is Russia and France. Yes, let's just write Russia and France. Sri Lanka is also classified as semi-presidential type, लेकिन यहाँ पे थोड़ा distinction है, so I'm not mentioning Sri Lanka here. Fine. Next is presidential form of government. Third is presidential form of government. Point number 1, single executive. Yes, under it write down president is head of the government. President is head of the government and head of the state. Second point, directly elected by the people. Next point, the president. See, president can either be directly elected. People can directly vote in a presidential election. जैसे हम है ना इसमें वोट करते हैं पार्लियामेंट्री या अपने लेजिस्लेचर के इलेक्शंस में, वैसे ही पीपल कैन वोट फॉर द प्रेसिडेंट, द कैंडिडेट्स हु आर स्टैंडिंग फॉर द पोस्ट ऑफ प्रेसिडेंट, और एल्स इट कैन बी थ्रू द सिस्टम ऑफ इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज, है ना, एज इज द केस इन यूएस. बट इन केस ऑफ यूएस ऑल्सो द इलेक्टोरल कॉलेज के जो मेंबर्स हैं, है ना, दे आर बाउंड बाय द वोट ऑफ द पीपल. So people in the state vote for a candidate, and according to the election result that has come from the vote of the people, the vote of the electoral college member is bound by it. So a member from Florida, है ना, electoral college के जो members है from Florida will be bound to vote a certain way in the election depending on the state level election which was conducted for है ना, to know the opinion of the people of Florida with respect to which candidate, presidential candidate they would want to choose. Role of people is there, है ना, तो ऐसे भी कहते हैं, है ना, you can also say it like this that he can be directly elected or through a use of electoral college. But then there is direct involvement. Electoral college does not enjoy independence. It does not have a choice as to whom he or she would want to vote. The electoral college members are bound by the vote of the people. So basically there is a direct role of the people in electing the president. So we are saying that yes, they are directly involved in the election of the president. Fine. Next point likho isi mein. The executive is not drawn from the legislature. The executive is not drawn from the legislature. Full stop. It is not responsible. It is not responsible to the legislature. Full stop. President has a fixed term. President has fixed term. And there is no provision. There is no provision of removal by any vote of no confidence. By any vote of no confidence. Yes. Full stop. Examples लिख लो, US, Brazil and most Latin American countries. Most Latin American countries. यस प्राइम, देखो वही है, अलग थोड़ा वेरिएशन होता है हर जगह हर कंट्री में, बट यस द प्रेसिडेंट इज फ्री. द प्रेसिडेंट अपॉइंट्स द प्राइम मिनिस्टर. in some countries it would necessarily be the leader of the, but the prime minister we can say is a member of the majority party in the legislature. yes, क्योंकि it is not his choice. The prime minister has to be from the majority party in the legislature. yes, तो वहां पे उसका चॉइस नहीं चलता है कि he can appoint somebody from his own party per se. yes, so the prime minister has to be from the party which enjoys majority in the legislature even in semi presidential form of government. So he gets bound at times, and that is the reason at times there is a scope of tussle between the two. Fine. Fine. So you have got a broad idea as far as we have discussed parliamentary. Some now you know about presidential form of government and semi-presidential form of government. Next is executive in India. Executive in India basically at, you can give the heading executive in India at central level and at state level. At central level and at state level. At central level it is, broadly speaking, detail में नहीं जा रहे, president and the prime minister who heads the COM, Council of Minister. The president and the prime minister heading the COM, and at the state level it is governor and the chief minister who heads his council of minister, his council of ministers. Yes. Now we'll discuss with respect to president. Yes. At the central level it was the president and the prime minister heading the COM, and at the state level it is governor and the chief minister heading the COM. Fine. Now let us start, let us discuss broadly with respect to the president. Now president in case of India, as we have already discussed, is a ceremonial head. He is a de jure head. He is the head of state. Yes. Now how is he to be elected? He is a ceremonial head. So how would he be elected? Directly by the people or indirectly by the people? Indirectly, because real power is not bestowed on him. So it would be not respecting the people by getting the president directly elected. If he is directly elected, he has to have some power in him. But since he is just a ceremonial head, there was this debate and discussion in the Constituent Assembly whereby some suggested that President of India should be directly elected by people of India. But the consensus was reached later on that since he is a ceremonial head, he is simply a constitutional head. He is just the head of the state with no real power. Therefore, he should not be directly elected by the people because it would incur a lot of cost. It would be a very time-consuming exercise when he is not to enjoy real powers. Yes. So, in fact, he is indirectly elected. And in case of India, he is elected through an electoral college which comprises, कौन है members of electoral college? Comprises elected MPs and elected members of state legislative assemblies. So state legislative councils are not involved, plus nominated members at the central level or at the state level are not involved in the election of the president. Yes. So he is elected through an electoral college. Write it down. He is indirectly elected. He is indirectly elected. He is indirectly elected through an electoral college. Through an electoral college. Through an electoral college. Underline electoral college. Full stop. It comprises elected MPs Elected MPs. Elected MPs मतलब a member of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Yes, both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are involved. If you want, you can mention it in bracket. If you are clear, it is fine. Elected MPs and elected members of state legislative assemblies. State legislative assemblies and elected members of legislative assemblies of union territories. यूनियन टेरिटरीज, कौन सी यूनियन टेरिटरीज के पास लेजिस्लेटिव असेंबलीज हैं? पुडुचेरी, दिल्ली and J&K is also expected to have a legislative assembly. So write it down. Elected members of legislative assemblies of UTs, union territories of Delhi, Puducherry, PUDU CHERY, Puducherry and J&K and Jammu and Kashmir. Yes, in bracket you can mention nominated members as well as members of state legislative councils, are not involved in his election. है ना, स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल आप समझते हो, है ना. सो एक है विधानसभा, एक है विधान परिषद. सो ओनली 6 स्टेट्स हैव, है ना, स्टेट लेजिस्लेटिव काउंसिल्स. सो जिस स्टेट में बाई कैमरल लेजिस्लेचर है, वहां के members of state legislative councils are also not involved in the election of the president, be them elected or nominated, whatever it may be the case, they are not involved. Fine. Next is, अच्छा इसी में लिखो, election is on the basis of क्या है basis? Single transferable vote is on the basis of single transferable vote based on the principle of proportional representation. It is based on the system of, based on single transferable vote based on principle of proportional representation. Yes, and he is elected for a period of 5 years. Elected for period of 5 years. Elected for, next point, elected for a period of 5 years. And term is renewable, है ना? Term is renewable. Term is renewable. So any number of times a person can be elected as President of India. In case of US, there is a limit of 2 terms. Yes, but in case of India, any number of times a person can be elected as President of India. Fine. Now, what is the process of his removal? Likho removal. Removal. You can put a slash and write down impeachment. Actually, we use this word specifically for his removal, that is impeachment. Yes. What is the process of removal or impeachment of the president? Violation of the constitution. So basically we'll mention that he can be impeached or removed only through the method and on the grounds mentioned under the Constitution. So the only ground that is mentioned under the Constitution is violation of the Constitution. But the Constitution has not elaborated what it means to violate the Constitution. ठीक है, तो Constitution सिर्फ कहता है कि impeachment can be on the ground of violation of Constitution. ठीक है, तो ग्राउंड उन्होंने ये मेंशन किया है. एंड प्रोसेस क्या मेंशन किया है? Without going into detail, he can be impeached when the resolution for his impeachment is supported by 2/3 of the total members या total strength of both लोक सभा एंड राज्यसभा. तो यहाँ पे there is no involvement of state legislative assemblies, है ना, या members of state legislative assemblies of union territories, though they are involved in his election, but they are not involved in his removal. Removal is only by both the houses of the parliament. And can you imagine, very strict majority has been suggested, 2/3 of the total strength of both the houses of the parliament. Fine. So this is the process of his removal. Write down. He can be impeached. He can be impeached only on the grounds, only on the grounds and only through the process mentioned under the Constitution. Yes, इसी में लिख लो नीचे ground, the ground है ना, put a hyphen. The ground that has been mentioned is violation of the Constitution. Ground is violation of the Constitution. Yes, put a hyphen. वहीं पे लिखो violation of the Constitution में put a hyphen. Write down. It has not been explained. It has not been explained. It has not been explained in the Constitution. What exactly it means has not been explained. And process likho. After ground, next is process. Write down the impeachment motion should be supported by 2/3 of the total strength, by 2/3 of the total strength of the total strength of both the houses of both the houses of the parliament Yes. Fine. Yes, Priyanshi says nominated members can participate in the impeachment. Yes. And so you find that nominated members who did not participate in the election of the president of both the houses of the parliament can now participate in his impeachment, but they do not participate in his election. Similarly, those who participated in his election, such as MLAs as well as members of the elected assemblies of the 3 UTs will not get a chance to participate in his impeachment. Yes, fine. So this is the idea. Yes, nominated members can participate in the impeachment process, but not in the election process. Yes, Ayush, I am not getting into details of the impeachment process. It is not half for approval, है ना. देखो जो पढ़ा रहे हैं उस पे ध्यान दो, है ना. अभी किचन कैबिनेट पढ़ाया नहीं है, किचन कैबिनेट पे क्वेश्चन मत पूछो, जब कैबिनेट पे आएंगे तब पूछना. और दूसरा, हाफ फॉर अप्रूवल नहीं होता, 1/4 होता है. But now we are not getting into the details of the impeachment process. As I told you, this is the basic ground for impeachment. Fine. Fine. So this is with respect to the election and removal of the president. Now, what is the power and position of the president in India? So as we discussed, the position of the we have started late. Do you want a break? ठीक है, चलो, it's 5 minutes break and then we'll continue. Yes, starting once again. Members of state legislative council will not participate in the impeachment process. State का कोई रोल नहीं है impeachment of the president. अब वो legislative council के member हो या legislative assembly के member हो, state का रोल नहीं है. रोल किसका है? सिर्फ the 2 houses of the parliament का ही रोल है in terms of impeachment of the president. That is what we have studied. Is there any difference between legislature and parliament? Not much difference, है ना. Synonymously use करते हैं national legislature, and national legislature can be of various names. In case of India we call it parliament, in case of Israel we call it Knesset, that we had studied, है ना. In case of Japan we call it Diet. So you have different countries give a different name to national legislature. In case of India it is parliament. Ma'am, how executive and legislature are interdependent? Because the executive is drawn from the legislature. That is how they are interdependent. Yes, executive is drawn from the legislature. Executive is responsible to the legislature. There is principle of collective responsibility. That is how they are interdependent. Fine. Now coming to the power and position of the president. Yes, so you find that as far as the president is concerned, we know that he is the de jure head, the ceremonial head. He is the head of the state. So since he is the head of the state, the government of the country is carried out in his name. Yes, if the government of the country is carried out in his name, it means he has a wide range. As such, he has a wide range of legislative, of executive, of judiciary, of emergency powers, and many more powers. And we are just naming 4 powers: legislative power, executive power, judicial power, and emergency power. And he is the head of the state. Government of India is conducted in his name, and therefore he enjoys a range of legislative functions, executive functions, judicial functions, and say emergency functions. Now can you give me few examples of legislative function performed by the president? He summons matlab calls. He summons both the houses of parliament. He dissolves Lok Sabha. Yes, he dissolves Lok Sabha. Rajya Sabha is a permanent house. We'll study later on. तो यहाँ पे सिर्फ एक ही हाउस डिसॉल्व हो सकता है, जो कि है लोकसभा. Yes, any other legislative function? Yes, he addresses the parliament in the first session. And once the government is elected, the first session में वो address करता है. Otherwise, we can, a simple example can be a bill can become an act or it can become a law only after the assent of the president. Yes, so these are, let us keep it at just two examples of the legislative function that he performs. Executive functions. Yeah, ordinance is in fact a legislative function, है ना? Ordinance making is in fact a legislative function. Executive function में क्या बताओगे? Yes, का appointment, attorney general का appointment, सबका अपॉइंटमेंट. इनफैक्ट हम यही बोल सकते हैं पीएम एंड सीओएम आर अपॉइंटेड बाय हिम. यस, दे होल्ड ऑफिस अंडर हिज pleasure also, we say. Yes, so you find that the appointment of PM and his COM can be considered as an executive function that he performs. Judicial function. Yes, power to pardon. Yes, he has the power to pardon. Emergency functions. Yes, there is provision of something known as President's rule. In fact, he is the one who will invoke emergencies. Yes, so there are three types of emergency: financial, national, or state emergency. So all these emergencies are invoked by him. Yes, and you find that there, in case of state emergency, when there is breakdown of constitutional machinery in the state, then president's rule can be imposed. Now what exactly it means, we'll discuss it later on, not now. But it means simply that the government in the state is not carried out in accordance with the constitutional provisions. So in case the government of the state fails to act according to constitutional provision, there is a provision in the Indian Constitution through which the president can proclaim state emergency, the government of the state will be dissolved, and his rule will extend into the state for a temporary period. Yes, till the time a new government is not elected. Fine. So that is the idea of president's rule. So you find that since he is the head of the state, since the government of India is conducted in his name, he enjoys a range of functions. But while performing all these functions, does he act in his own discretion? No, he does not act in his own discretion because he is a ceremonial head. He is a de jure head. He does not enjoy real powers. He acts only on the aid and advice, yes, of the Prime Minister who heads the COM. Yes, so in fact, this is a very important article, so we are mentioning it here. Article 74 Clause 1 reads, there shall be a council of minister with Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the president. In fact, the original constitution itna hi tha ye, Article 74 Clause 1 itna hi tha, there shall be a council of minister with Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the president. In fact, the Constitution of India does not mention any other function for the COM, for the Council of Minister. Constitution में और कोई function ही नहीं दिया गया है to the COM. Yes, the only function mentioned under the Constitution of India for the Council of Minister is to aid and advise the President. And therefore, it is believed that the aid and advice of the President is not superfluous. Aid and advice of the COM is not superfluous. मतलब उसको मानना जरूरी है. Yes, so it is essential that you follow the aid and advice of the COM. Fine. So this was a parliamentary convention. That parliamentary form of government, the head of the state is a de jure head. He or she does not enjoy real power. So it is the COM headed by the PM which is the real executive which enjoys real power. So whatever they tell the president, he has to follow. But in the initial years, yes, there was a lot of conflict even under Indian Constitution between the president and the PM. both would want to proclaim more powers under their offices. So eventually, through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, a provision was added which clarified the convention, which now reads that the President shall, in exercise of his function, act in accordance with such advice. So this part of the provision of the article was added through 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. Yes, just to clarify the role, the role of the Prime Minister and the President. The Prime Minister who's heading the COM and the President, that whatever advice that the COM gives shall be mandatory for the President to follow. In fact, this word, है ना, ये सारे जो शब्द हैं इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में, they carry a lot of importance. They could have written who will, they could have written who will in exercise of his function act in accordance with such advice, but they chose to use the word shall. Shall means it shall be binding. There is no choice. Will mein there is an element of choice, but in the word shall there is no element of choice for the President. So the President is bound by whatever advice the COM gives, and he is to act according to the advice to fulfill the various functions that he performs as the head of the state or as the nominal head of the government. Fine, that is the idea. Fine. It is, however, later on there was a need felt, है ना. ये 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act actually देखो emergency period में आया था. It was in 1976, है ना, that 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act was brought in. After that, emergency was imposed by Indira Gandhi, and later on Indira Gandhi decides to end the national emergency, and consequently next government, Janata Party, Janata government came to power. तो अब जब नया गवर्नमेंट आया तो वो चाहते थे, क्योंकि इन द इंडियन पॉलिटिकल सिस्टम देयर वाज अ टेंडेंसी अंटिल देन फॉर कांग्रेस, वी वर वन पार्टी डोमिनेंट सिस्टम, कांग्रेस पार्टी ही अधिकतर इलेक्शंस जीतती थी. सो दे ओपोजिशन केम टू पावर नाउ, सो दे वांटेड टू स्ट्रेंथन द प्रेसिडेंट, गिव हिम सम डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर. यस, है ना, क्योंकि वो प्रेसिडेंट पे थोड़ा अपना इन्फ्लुएंस लगा सकते हैं, and there is a chance in the next election once again Congress will come to power. So they want to strengthen the office of the President. Therefore, this provision was added by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, 1978. Now, it gave an element of discretion to the Indian President. What is that element of discretion? It provided that President may require the COM to reconsider such an advice. So once the advice has been tendered, has been given to the President, he is expected to follow that advice. He is bound by that advice. Why bound by that advice? क्योंकि 42nd Constitutional Amendment आ गया. दूसरा reason क्या है? क्योंकि COM has been given no other role under the Indian Constitution but to aid and advise the President. So this role, this is the only role which Constitution gives. How can this role be superfluous? The advice has to be mandatory. Yes, it is common sense. However, now through another constitutional amendment, there was some element of discretion, some element of will given to the President. That will is that in case the COM gives President certain advice and the President is not very happy with that advice, he can send back that advice for reconsideration. However, if the COM re-advises him, either on the same lines or whatever, by bringing in certain changes, whatever might be the reconsidered advice given by the COM to the President, he is now going to be bound by that advice. So it reads, provided that the President may require the COM to reconsider such advice. Yes? However, and the President shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. Yes? So after reconsideration, if the COM chooses to give the same advice, in that case also the president is bound to follow that advice. Yes, so for once it can ask the COM to reconsider its advice, but the COM is not bound to revise the advice since the president suggested so. The COM has a will, has a choice of tendering the same advice, giving back the same advice, or making suitable changes. Yes, but what is the point of view of the president then asking the COM to reconsider? There is a point, because president is the head of the state. President is the first citizen of India. He is the head of the armed forces, commander in chief of all the 3 armed forces, है ना. He is एक ऑफिशियल लिस्ट होता है, उसको कहते हैं वारंट ऑफ प्रेसिडेंस. वो लिस्टिंग डाउन ऑफ मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पीपल, है ना. और क्या लिस्ट सीक्वेंस में अरेंज होता है. तो इन वारंट ऑफ प्रेसिडेंस, president is the first person. Yes, so he is the most important person in India. He is representative of India on international platform. तो अगर वो कह रहा है रिकंसिडर करने, तो उसको बहुत लाइटली भी नहीं ले सकते, है ना, क्योंकि वो ऐसे कहेगा ही नहीं आपको रिकंसिडर करने, until and unless he feels the need that it should be reconsidered, and the COM should then genuinely reconsider their advice, क्योंकि एक moral authority है ना. President, he is not any individual. He is head of state. He is the first citizen. He is the representative of India on international platforms. So when he asks to reconsider, it might be so that you don't feel the need to make any changes, but for once you will rethink over the advice. Yes, so that is the idea. It carries a moral authority when he sends the bill or sends the suggestions back for reconsideration. Yes, so a balance has been struck between the president as the ceremonial head and the PM and the COM as the real executive. Right? So this is with respect to the position, power and position. Let us write this much, then we'll discuss further. Write down. Yes, give the heading as powers and position of president in India. Yes. Tanushka says president issues ordinances during emergency. देखो ordinance जरूरी नहीं है emergency में ही issue होते हैं. जब भी the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are not meeting, तब अगर president feels the need कि भाई अभी कोई legislation की जरूरत है, या president को तो खुद को कोई need नहीं है ना, he acts on the aid and advice of the COM. So COM feels कि अभी immediate time being में हमें need है of this legislation, and making a legislation through the parliament, getting its approval, it's a long drawn process. बहुत debate, discussion, फिर committees को भेजा जाता है, फिर उनके suggestions आते हैं, फिर approval आता है. So if they want to act immediately, and when the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are not in session, then the president issues ordinances. ठीक है, तो that is the idea. Write down. Under it, write down. The president is the head of the state, and he is the nominal head of the government. Full stop. Government of India is conducted in his name. Full stop. Thus he enjoys a range of legislative, comma, executive, comma, judicial, and emergency powers. And emergency powers. Yes, in bracket you can write down legislative power, लिख लो. क्या क्या powers है, just few examples there. Legislative power में लिखो, for a bill to become an act, for a bill to become an act. For a bill to become an act, his assent is required. His assent is required. इसी में लिखो, he summons the parliament. He summons the parliament. He summons, SUMMONS. He summons the parliament and dissolves the Lok Sabha. And dissolves the Lok Sabha. Executive power में लिखो, write down, he appoints the PM. He appoints the PM and other ministers. And other ministers of his COM, of his Council of Ministers, of his COM, based on Prime Minister's advice. Based on Prime Minister's advice. Yes, so the Prime Minister advises on the appointment of his ministers. इसी में लिख लो, he appoints Attorney General. He appoints Attorney General. Yes. Judicial power में लिखो, he appoints the judges. He appoints the judges. Of Supreme Court and High Court. And he has power to grant pardon. He has power to grant pardon. Yes. Emergency powers लिख लो. Emergency powers. He invokes all the three types of emergencies. He invokes all the three types of emergencies. Yes. Put a hyphen, national, state and financial emergency. National, comma, state and financial emergency. Yes. Fine. So this is in terms of, and a few powers that we have listed, few functions that we have listed for the president. लिखो, अब नीचे लिखो, next point लिखो. However, in a parliamentary system like India, these powers are in reality exercised by the president, only on aid and advice of the COM, of the Council of Ministers. Yes. Full stop. Write down the COM headed by the PM is the real executive. Is the real executive. Is the real executive. Is the real executive. Yes. Next point, write down. Write down Article 74 clause 1 clarifies the position of the president. The position of president in India. Of the president in India. Write down, it reads that there shall be a COM. There shall be a COM with the Prime Minister, with the PM, to aid and advise the President. To aid and advise the President. Full stop. इसी में लिखो, change the paragraph, write down. This is the only function to aid and advise the President. Full stop. Write down, this is the only function that has been assigned to the COM. That has been assigned to the COM under the Indian Constitution. And therefore, the advice given to the President by the COM is not superfluous. Is not superfluous. Yes, it is not superfluous. Full stop. It is binding. On the President. It is binding on the President. Full stop. इसी में लिखो, change the paragraph as next point. इसी में लिखो, President cannot do anything. President cannot do anything without the advice or against the advice of the COM. Full stop. Next point लिखो इसी में. This position of the President, या this relation, ठीक है, this position of the President लिखो. This position of the President was further clarified through the 42nd this position of the President was further clarified through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Full stop. Write down, it added that 1976, it added that the president shall act in accordance to such advice. Full stop. Underline the word shall, write down. Shall in single inverted commas, underline, means the advice is binding. Means the advice is binding on the president. On the president. Last point लिखो. Later, through the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act 1978, a proviso मतलब क्या होता है? Exception. A proviso was added. या exception was added, whereby the president may send back the advice. For reconsideration once. But he is bound to accept the reconsidered advice of the COM. Yes, fine. So this is as far as the power and position of the president is concerned. As the nominal head of the government, as the formal head of the government, he enjoys a range of functions, but all these functions are to be exercised in advice of the COM. Yes, and the advice of the COM is binding for the president. Why? Because this is the only function assigned to the COM, and secondly, through the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act. And this position of the president was clarified further, that he shall be bound by the advice of the COM. Fine. Yes. No, bureaucrats will not suggest. Bureaucrats will suggest the real executive, the PM and the COM. Yes, and they will suggest to the president. So there is no as such direct relation between the bureaucrats and the president. Yes, so the bureaucrats can give an advice to the PM and the COM, and they will in turn advise the president. On what basis? Constitution, we'll read it later on. The Constitution tells कि ये इस बिल पे ऐसे ही एक्ट करना है, उसको ज्यादा डिस्क्रिशन है नहीं. But as such, as an individual, if I am head of the state, if I have reached that position, I have a mind of my own. Yes. So on a personal level, I can seek advice from someone, or otherwise I have a mind of my own. I can make up my mind and say that I would want the advice to be reconsidered. There is a difference. Then it is not necessary for the PM or the COM to revise the bill, na? So if they feel what they are doing is right, then they can go ahead. They can give the same advice back to the president, and now in this case he will be bound by that advice. Yes. So that is how it operates. And there are a number of bills in which the president has no discretion. He is just bound to give assent. Yes, so that is how it is. Fine, next give the heading as discretionary power of the president. Yes. Prime Minister. Prime Minister. No, they are not interchangeably used. Cabinet is a subset of COM. We'll discuss it. अभी हम वहाँ पहुँचे नहीं, अभी we'll go there. Yes, you have given the heading as discretionary powers of the president. Yes, Abhay Kumar, we are coming to your topic. So as far as the president is concerned, does he have certain discretionary powers or not? देखो, the president is in a parliamentary form of government. In a parliamentary form of government, the head of state, be it the monarch or be it the elected head, be it the president or be it the monarch, they are expected to be ceremonial heads. Ceremonial heads. That means they do not have any real power. Yes, they are bound to act on aid and advice of the COM headed by the PM. Yes, but now, so it is in this context when you are expected to be a ceremonial head, we talk about two types within the ceremonial head. One type under the ceremonial head, is known as figurehead. And the other type, we try to distinguish it as a constitutional head. Yes. So a figurehead would be the head of the state, is a ceremonial head which has no real power at all. Even under extraordinary situations, है ना, यहाँ पे जैसे एक extraordinary situation है ना, whereby he can suggest the bill, send the bill for reconsideration, for example. But in case there is a figurehead, even under extraordinary situations, he will have no power. Yes, such head of states are known as figureheads. But we say in case of India, we have not created a figurehead. What we have created is a constitutional head. So as such, the president does not enjoy many discretions, does not enjoy many areas where he can actually exercise his will, but there is some scope given. So under certain extraordinary situations, you find that there is some scope for he applying his own discretion, he applying his own will. Yes, therefore we say the president of India is in fact a constitutional head. Yes, and if we were to give evidences that he is in fact a constitutional head, we mention the various discretionary powers that he enjoys. One discretionary power that we have already studied is under Article 74, Clause 1, whereby he can send the bill back for reconsideration, or send the bill nahi to send the advice, है ना, send the advice back for reconsideration. Yes, though he was bound by the reconsidered advice, but when he is sending the advice back, he acts on his own discretion. He is not acting on the aid and advice of the COM headed by the PM. Second area where he enjoys discretion, the Indian president enjoys discretion, is with respect to bills, है ना. तो bills के केस में there is certain vetoes, है ना, that he enjoys as far as law making is concerned. Yes, so generally speaking, when a bill is given to the president, and generally speaking, he will give his assent. But he has 2-3 options with respect to when he receives the bill. So he can give his assent, he can send back bill for reconsideration, or else, since the constitution does not mention any time period in which he has to return the bill, he can choose not to send the bill back. He can choose not to send the bill back with his signature. So he can continue to hold the bill indefinitely. Yes. So in fact, in case of giving his assent, he has no discretion. He has been advised, he has been given the bill, he will give his assent. When he sends back the bill for reconsideration, we call this as a suspensive veto. Yes, suspensive veto. Why? Because he can send the bill once for reconsideration, but if the bill has been reconsidered and presented back to the president even in the same form, he is bound to give his assent, and he can hold the bill with him indefinitely. This is known as pocket veto. It is like keeping the bill in his pocket and never taking it out. Yes, he will keep the bill indefinitely pending with him. Yes, so in case of suspensive veto as well as pocket veto, he enjoys a certain amount of discretion. Yes, so this is also an example of discretionary power that he enjoys. Third area where he enjoys ठीक है, वो डिस्कस करने से पहले वो एक एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सिचुएशन है. यहाँ पे भी नॉर्मल सर्कमस्टांस में see the prime minister is expected to regularly inform the president of whatever matter is being considered by the COM. कि COM और कैबिनेट लेवल पे क्या डिस्कशन चल रहा है, क्या इश्यूज है ऑफ अर्जेंट पब्लिक इंपॉर्टेंस, व्हाट इज द गवर्नमेंट प्लानिंग टू डू अबाउट इट, है ना. तो रेगुलर कम्युनिकेशन ऑफ द एजेंडा ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, व्हाट द गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग, is to be made by the prime minister to the president. Now there might arise a situation where the president is worried about some development in India and the prime minister has yet not gone to inform him. So in that situation, the president can ask the prime minister to come and update him on the recent developments on the agenda of the government of the day. Yes, so when he asks, वैसे prime minister is constitutionally obligated. There is an article under the Indian constitution which constitutionally obligates the prime minister to go regularly and meet the president and update him about the agenda of the government. But in case the president is worried, the president is concerned, he wants a swift update, he can also ask the prime minister to come to him and inform him of the developments of the agenda of the government, what is the government doing with respect to certain developments. Yes, so in this matter, when the president asks the prime minister to come and update him on the agenda of the government, here also he acts in his own discretion. And last, as she was mentioning, in case when there generally prime minister को कौन appoint करता है, he is appointed by president. अब जब प्रेसिडेंट अपॉइंट करता है, डज ही एक्ट इन हिज ओन डिस्क्रिशन, उसका जिसका मन होता है वो उसको अपॉइंट कर देता है? नहीं, द प्राइम मिनिस्टर इज द लीडर ऑफ मेजॉरिटी पार्टी इन लोकसभा. Yes, so in such a circumstance, supposedly there is no majority party, no party has secured majority in the Lok Sabha elections. In that case, when there is no clarity as to which is the majority party and which leader, whose leader can be appointed as the prime minister, and there might arise a situation whereby 2-3 political parties, है ना, through various compromises, है ना, various coalition attempts, may go to the president and say that yes, I have the required majority, let me form the government. In that case, the president decides of the 2-3 leaders who have come to him that who will genuinely be able to enjoy the support of the house and run the government. So in such an extraordinary situation where no political party has secured a majority in the Lok Sabha, yes, and leaders of 2-3 parties have approached the president to let them form the government, it is on the discretion of the president. He decides out of his own application of mind that which leader is more likely to be able to sustain the government, and he can appoint such a person as the prime minister. Yes, later on, going ahead, that prime minister has to prove his majority of the house. He has to seek a vote of confidence of the house. But then once president on his discretion appoints the that person as the PM of the country. Fine. So it is under these 4 circumstances that we find that he enjoys some discretionary power, and therefore the president of India is not a figurehead, but he is a constitutional head. In fact, there's a very famous statement given by Jawaharlal Nehru. He clarified that their intention is not to create a figurehead, rather a constitutional head. And in this context, we find that the President of India is in fact a constitutional head who gets to enjoy certain discretion under extraordinary circumstances. Yes? Fine. Let's write it down. No, he is bound. At that point of time, he is bound to sign the bill. है ना, अगर पॉकेट वीटो अप्लाई करना है तो वो पहले ही अप्लाई कर लो. बट आफ्टर, है ना, देखो उस समय भी ऐसा है कि कोई टाइम लिमिट मेंशन नहीं है, बट जनरली you will sign the bill after the cabinet has reconsidered it. And there are very few instances where actually the president will send bills back for reconsideration. Rarely it happens. तो you और मतलब कर सकते हैं लेकिन करते नहीं हैं. अगर रिकंसिडर करने के बाद आ गया तो दैट मीन्स द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ द डे, हु इज द रियल एग्जीक्यूटिव, जिनको पीपल ने डायरेक्टली वोट करके भेजा है, वो कह रहे हैं कि यही सही है. तो फिर एट दैट पॉइंट द कन्वेंशन सेज दैट ही शुड गिव असेंट. ही विल नॉट एट दैट पॉइंट अप्लाई पॉकेट वीटो, है ना. बट ही इज नॉट, ऐसा कोई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली ऐसा नहीं है, कोई टाइम पीरियड मेंशन नहीं है वहां पे भी, तो ही कैन, बट कन्वेंशन यही है कि ही विल साइन. Not necessary, he can keep the bill pending. कोई आखिर है ही नहीं, गवर्नमेंट एक्सपायर हो जाएगी 5 साल बाद, वो है ना, तो बस फिर बिल खत्म. एक होता है, कुछ है एब्सोल्यूट वीटो, जहां पे मैंने आपको 3 चॉइसेस बताए प्रेसिडेंट के पास. ही गिव्स असेंट, ही सेंड्स द बिल बैक फॉर रिकंसिडरेशन, ही कीप्स इट इन हिज पॉकेट. There is a 4th option also whereby he rejects the bill. He says, I will not give assent. But that is known as absolute veto, once he has refused to sign the bill. Lekin can the president refuse to sign a bill given by the COM, who is the real head? ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. तो ये तभी होगा जब COM itself advises the president that you now reject the bill, you don't sign this bill. तब वो एब्सोल्यूट वीटो. तो दैट इज नॉट अ पावर ऑफ हिज, है ना, पावर इन हिज डिस्क्रिशन, इट इज ऑन द एडवाइस ऑफ द COM. ठीक है, फाइन. लेट्स राइट इट डाउन. एक जन बोलो क्या. नॉट अ कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वायलेशन, और वो बहुत कम करेगा, ये करता नहीं है इस तरह से. Many times उसको हटा देंगे प्रेसिडेंट के गवर्नमेंट, है ना, ऐसे आदमी को बनाएंगे ही नहीं प्रेसिडेंट जो ऐसा करेगा। एंड वो अवेयर है ना, उसका कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल पोजीशन के बारे में उसको अवेयरनेस है। ही इज अ सेरेमोनियल हेड, वो अपने आप को इतना असर्ट नहीं कर सकता है इन अ पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, है ना। वो उसको ऐसे आदमी को क्यों बनाएंगे फिर। एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम को दोबारा प्रेसिडेंसी नहीं दी गई, क्यों नहीं दी गई, क्योंकि ही बिकेम टू पॉपुलर अमंग्स द मासेस। So you don't want the president to be very popular. He has to assume a subdued position. उसको बहुत ज्यादा पॉपुलर नहीं होना है, उसको डायरेक्ट लोगों से ज्यादा इंटरेक्ट नहीं करना है। ही इज द सेरेमोनियल हेड, ही इज द फिग, ही उसको नॉमिनल हेड है, वो उसको दिखना है हेड ऑफ इंडिया, बट वो जाके अपने आप को एसर्ट नहीं कर सकता। यस, सो दैट इज द आइडिया। हाँ, ये अच्छा सवाल है कि अगर सवारे पावर तो सीओएम के पास ही है, जब रियल हेड तो सीओएम है, तो फिर क्यों क्यों वाई क्रिएट दिस ऑफिस ऑफ प्रेसिडेंट फॉर नो रीजन, डज नॉट हैव मच पावर। जो डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर है वो भी बहुत कम है। ही पीएम इज बाउंड टू कम एंड इन्फॉर्म द प्रेसिडेंट, अगर वो इन्फॉर्म करने में थोड़ा लेट हो रहा है तो फिर द प्रेसिडेंट कैन आस्क हिम टू कम, है ना। एक है सस्पेंसिव वीटो और पॉकेट वीटो, वो जो पॉकेट वीटो रेयरली यूज करेगा। यस, एंड सिर्फ एक एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सिचुएशन में उसके पास है, व्हेन ही डिसाइड्स हु विल बी द पीएम। so in that what is the reason for creating this office of president if he does not, if he is just the ceremonial head, क्या जरूरत है इनको क्रिएट करने की। हाँ, पीएम कर लेते, पीएम के नाम पे कर लेंगे गवर्नमेंट। देखो, उसमें प्रेसिडेंट के पास एग्जीक्यूटिव पावर नहीं आता, केयर टेकर गवर्नमेंट वगैरह आ जाती है। बट येस, व्हाट शी इज सेइंग इज राइट, हर आइडिया इज राइट कि एक्स्ट्राऑर्डिनरी सिचुएशन में, क्योंकि इंडिया इज अ पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, तो यहाँ पे पार्लियामेंट्री फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट में क्या दिक्कत है कि द रियल हेड डज नॉट हैव अ फिक्स टर्म, द रियल एग्जीक्यूटिव डज नॉट हैव अ फिक्स टर्म। Today they have been elected, after 10 days a vote of no confidence takes place and the government will fall. So if in case the government falls, for the temporary period, somebody has to be there to represent India at the international level. There has to be some head, somebody that we can see up to is the government of India, is the head of the government of India. Yes, for that reason you have president, you have this position of head of state, because head of government or the real executive in a parliamentary form does not have a fixed term. Yes, so in that case you need a head of state to represent India internationally, for the people of India to feel, people of any country, parliamentary form of government country, to feel that yes, there is a government, there is somebody who's responsible for looking after the government of India. Yes, that is one reason. And second reason is extraordinary situation where जब कोई इलेक्शन के डायरेक्ट रिजल्ट्स नहीं है, अब अगर कोई प्रेसिडेंट नहीं होता, हु वुड हैव मेड द चॉइस बिटवीन द थ्री लीडर्स हु आर सेइंग दैट आई एम सुटेबल टू बिकम द प्राइम मिनिस्टर। somebody who has the power, who has the discretion to select and administer the oath, appoint this person as the PM of the country. So for those two reasons we have the office of the president. Yes, write it down. सेकेंड मतलब रिकंसिडर्ड। हाँ, सस्पेंसिव वीटो के बाद वो पॉकेट वीटो लगा रहा है, इसका आप ये कह रहे हो ना, दिस इज व्हाट यू आर सेइंग। सो दैट इज व्हाट आई हैड सेड प्रीवियसली कि ऑफ कोर्स इट विल बी कंसिडर्ड पॉकेट वीटो इफ इज नॉट एक्टिंग ऑन द बिल, बट देन जो कन्वेंशन है, ही इज नॉट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली ऑब्लिगेटेड टू नॉट अप्लाई पॉकेट वीटो आफ्टर अप्लाइंग सस्पेंसिव वीटो। बट ऐसा करेगा नहीं प्रेसिडेंट, प्लीज रिमेंबर ही इज अ सेरेमोनियल हेड। After the real head has made its intent clear, then the president is in no power to apply the suspensive veto. अगर लगाना था, उसको पता होना चाहिए था कि the executive is going to be is going to be very adamant. They are not going to make changes. So at that point, he could have chosen, at the very first instance, if he wanted, he should have applied pocket veto. But such instances are rare. बस अब लिखे, देख लेते हैं ऑनलाइन वालों का क्या है. What is Attorney General? Attorney General is the advocate, is the lawyer representing the central government. Yes, his function is to represent the central government. CGI क्या है? CGI is Chief Justice of India. Amongst the judges, he is the head. He is the, है ना, हर, है ना, Supreme Court में there are 25 judges, I think so, है ना. तो you find that उन सब जजेस का जो लीडर है, जो हेड है, वो है सीजीआई, चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया. अटॉर्नी जनरल इज द लॉयर ऑफ गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया. सीजीआई इज द हेड ऑफ द सुप्रीम कोर्ट. सॉलिसिटर जनरल अटॉर्नी जनरल का जूनियर है ना, उसका जूनियर है सॉलिसिटर जनरल. स्टेट लेवल पे जो हेड ऑफ, जो रिप्रेजेंट करता है स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को, उसको बोलते हैं एडवोकेट जनरल. सेंट्रल लेवल पे अटॉर्नी जनरल, अटॉर्नी जनरल का जूनियर है सॉलिसिटर जनरल. यूके मोनार्क इज अ फिगर हेड. यस, यूके मोनार्क इज अ फिगर हेड. अभी गवर्नर पे पहुंचे नहीं है. गवर्नर हैज मेनी मोर पावर्स कंपेयर्ड टू प्रेसिडेंट. प्रेसिडेंट से ज्यादा डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर गवर्नर के पास है. अभी क्या है वो नहीं डिस्कस करेंगे. Yes. Fine. Let's write it down now. So what have you written? Discretionary powers to the president. Write down. In a parliamentary form of government, in a parliamentary form of government, head of the state, comma, head of the state head of the state is a ceremonial head, is a ceremonial head. Full stop. He does not enjoy real power and is bound by advice of COM. Write down. Next point. The head of the state under parliamentary form of government can be distinguished as either put a hyphen and draw two arrows and write down figurehead or constitutional head. Figurehead or constitutional head. Under figurehead, put a hyphen, write down he does not enjoy discretionary power even in extraordinary situation. Yes, and under constitutional head, write down his office becomes functional. in extraordinary situation. In extraordinary situation. Write down, he enjoys some amount of, under constitutional head, he enjoys some amount of discretionary power. Write down, next point, President of India is a constitutional head. Is a constitutional head. Yes. Fine. Write down now, write down reasons. Reasons. Write down, he enjoys some amount of discretionary power. He enjoys some amount of discretionary power. Point number 1. Write down proviso. Proviso. P-R-O. Proviso. P-R-O-V-I-S-O. Added by 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. And I am not explaining it. We have already written it. है ना, तो अभी फिर से नहीं लिख रहे कि he can send back the bill या send back the advice once for reconsideration. Yes, if you want you can write it, लेकिन ठीक है if you don't write it. Next point लिखो. Second. Next point is suspensive veto and pocket veto. In context of ordinary bills. Write down, under suspensive veto we are writing, है ना, suspensive veto के अंदर लिखो the president can send back a bill passed by both the houses of the parliament for reconsideration. Full stop. But once the bill has been presented to him, in an amended form or in the same form as before, he is now bound to give his assent. Yes. Second point. अब second यही pocket veto को explain करते हैं. Pocket veto. Write down, since there is no time period mentioned within which president should return the bill President should return the bill, comma, he can keep the bill, he can keep the bill indefinitely pending before him, indefinitely pending before him. This is called as pocket veto. This is called as pocket veto. Third point, under his discretionary power, write down constitutionally, the president constitutionally, the president has the right to be informed, of all administrative matters, comma, important matters being considered by the COM, Write down, the Prime Minister is bound to communicate all such information to the President at regular intervals. The Prime Minister is bound to communicate all such information to the President at regular intervals. Full stop. However, the President on his own, in his discretion, the President on his own can call upon the Prime Minister for information on any matter of importance to the country. Yes, change the paragraph, same point, write down, the president also often writes to the Prime Minister. The President also often writes to the Prime Minister and expresses his views on issues confronting the country. Yes, so all this he does in his discretion. And last point, on issues confronting the country and facing the country. Last point of discretion, write down, discretion arising out of political circumstance. Discretion arising out of political circumstance. Due to political circumstance. Write down, generally President appoints leader of majority party. Generally, the President appoints leader of majority party in the Lok Sabha as the Prime Minister. इसी में change the paragraph, write down, but in a situation where no leader या no political party, where no political party has clear majority in Lok Sabha, comma, and two three leaders are claiming to have got the support. 2-3 leaders are claiming to have got the support of majority after attempting to forge alliances, to form alliances comma, president in his discretion should judge who would have support of majority, and who can form and run the government. Yes, full stop. लिखो, for example, in the decade from 1989 till 1998, decade from 1989 till 1998, there were 4 parliamentary elections. There were 4 parliamentary elections, and no single party or coalition got majority in Lok Sabha. Full stop. Such a situation created scope for presidential discretion. Yes, full stop. So this is why he is known as the constitutional head. Next, give a heading. बस एक छोटा सा heading कि why this post has been created. Let's just write it down. Write down. As a heading, I am making you write a sentence. Let's write it down. Write down, since for most part president's role is ceremonial. Since for most part president's role is ceremonial, then why create an office of president? Then why create an office of president? Yes. Then why create the office of president? तो लिखो reasons. Point number 1, Write down. In parliamentary form of government, the COM, comma, the real executive does not enjoy a fixed term. Does not enjoy a fixed term. They can be removed. They can be removed at any time by passing a vote of no confidence in the Lok Sabha. Full stop. Change the paragraph, same point. Therefore, in such a situation, therefore such a situation requires a head of state, who has a fixed term, comma, who may appoint the Prime Minister and symbolically represent the entire country. And second reason, write down. Also under extraordinary circumstance, when no political party has a clear majority, comma, President has an additional role to make a choice and appoint the Prime Minister. Full stop. Fine. So this is why you need a head of state, even when they are mostly ceremonial. They do not enjoy any real power as such in a parliamentary form of government. Fine, we'll continue our discussion on the executive in the next class. Yes, Ayush is asking, ma'am, were the farm laws introduced through ordinance? As far as I can remember, yes, most likely they were introduced through ordinance. Do a Google search on it. Yes. Thank you.